The news tonight, the ones they pulled out that they would like to have, the stations asked me if I'd make additional comments thereupon, or do something on them, they said. Since we have been the recipient of many news items of late regarding collective intelligence, the metaphor of herd intelligence, and then the possibility of individual intelligence, the really kind of dreamy, obviously got to be symbolic idea, possibility of someone being able to in some way think, maybe not independently, as grossly and directly as the news items would have it, but perhaps relatively speaking. In conjunction with all of that, there was one news item tonight that caught my attention that some of you may have thought about. You'll know the reality of this as soon as I tell you. It's just not normally analyzed in any particular way that would be of individual benefit to anyone. The news item went thusly. By having large numbers of people think the same thing, life continues to exercise its mass manipulation. Let me point out something. This has surely been done when I say you're not going to be caught flat-footed, but it's always been done on a cultural, it's always been on a pejorative, it has always been on a physical basis, what little notice was mentioned, and I guess it would still, in those kind of soft, mushy science circles, be known as studies of mass psychology. But they have, as always, the collective is not going to engage in self-study. It can't. But all of you should know this, if you want me to bring it up to date, because it goes on continually. And I'm sure somewhere in college you must have read things about mass psychology, or there have been movies. There was some famous movie where it was incident at Oxbow Creek or something, that some town gets all carried away there, and it goes back to Shakespeare and Chaucer. There's versions of all this kind of stuff, that some group of people sort of go mad. And the story normally, it tends to give them a way out. Like somebody starts out drinking and decides that so-and-so down the road is a witch, or that somebody's kid dies and they don't know what happened. They decide, well, so-and-so put a spell on them. And at first people go, well, no. But anyway, the point is, it turns out that a whole group of people get carried away, and that something that they like to refer to, it's a good 24-hour, 7-day-a-week trapdoor, is to say, well, it's mass hysteria. It's mass madness. It's mass psychology, and you can't trust it. But at any rate, it works out that a whole group of people get all wired up. They'll begin to talk each other up, that I'm sure so-and-so must have killed. He's the guy that robbed the bank. He's the guy that shot so-and-so, the sheriff's brother. You know, first people go, well, we don't know that. Let the law take its course, or that's ridiculous. And so they have a few drinks, or they do something. The guy keeps talking, and then 2 people believe it, and then 10. And then pretty soon, this whole town, large number of people are moving down the street, and they grab the guy and string him up. And then the stories always like to have a punchline. Then by the time that they kick him a few times and push him, and the birds come up and begin to peck his eyes, and they're sure he's dead, then suddenly somebody rides over the hill and say, hey, so-and-so just confessed to doing it. And then everybody, you're supposed to feel, oh, God, you know, that's us. Let me refine a little bit of that, and then take it to the point that you wouldn't even want to hear about it if you were ordinary. It's life, it starts out talking about having people think, and then what it's comparing it to, or kind of punchline in the news item, was life continues its mass manipulation. If you'll extract any possibility of a negative inference to manipulation, which I know it normally has, if you consider this, there is a rhythm, there is an absolute tempo, but rhythm I guess would be more explanatory to start this. And everybody should know this. There's a rhythm to your body, whether you have a sense of rhythm. It doesn't matter whether you can dance or not. If you're fairly healthy, there's a rhythm going on in your body. Your pulse, you know this, is supposed to stay, and it does stay within a certain kind of consistent restraint under ordinary conditions. There is, as cosmologists, surely, they were fooling around with it, but they keep picking up these sound waves that they're named they call, I think, radiation, background radiation. But there is, trust me, beyond the science, I'm telling you secret information. I may have made it up, but we're talking about real news here. Well, Remember last time, not that kind of phony baloney news that most stations report of crap that happened. This is stuff that I made up. This is good stuff. Well, it's the real news. It's the real news. Believe me, the universe itself has a rhythm to it. There is a pounding. All right. Take that if you want to, if you're ordinary. All that is metaphorical to start with. But inside, I took it all the way from your heartbeat to the universe itself. All right. Inside of that, between those two extremes, what is going on in the life of man, let's talk about man, is going on in other animals. How else do you think, since we brought it up last time, amongst other things that they could attempt to explain it by, how can you see that there is a rhythm going on that explains, it'd be one possible explanation, but believe me, it is true, that there is a rhythm going on that makes a flock of geese be able to fly, or a swarm of bees, and turn. And they all turn at the same time. They don't not run to each other. They do not have geese wrecks. Bees do not rear end one another. Well, if they do, they only do it once. They don't take away their wings or their car like they do here. They only do it once. There is a rhythm going on in the animal world, which is not that far removed from what I started pointing out, that there is a rhythm going on in you. Not the neural level, let's call it symbolically the hormonal level. Your pulse, your breathing, your heart rate. It is a rhythm going on around which you live. And if it gets too far off the beat, it's not like that you're a terrible dancer and the judges give you a 0.0. If you get too bad with that kind of rhythm inside, you don't just simply lose the contest, you die. You cease to exist, except as a potential pastrami sandwich on the way to the Hormel plant in Chicago. There is a rhythm going on at the level, and it goes on in animals. And much of so-called animal behavior that those that have the hobby of being biologists and zoologists, they still find it impossible to explain. It's rhythm. It is a rhythm. But now let's go from all of that, from the animal kingdom, which there's no doubt about, to you, which there's no doubt about, at the purely physical level. All the way from that to the cosmos, to the universe, that there is a rhythm going on that, in another sense, holds it together. If the universe lost a sense of rhythm, it would fall apart. In between that, getting around to what they have played with mass psychology or the madness of crowds and all that, there's something else going on. It's not simply the madness of crowds. What is easy to see is always, man, are apparent examples of the bad news. But it's all the news. There is a rhythm going on in all of human behavior. Until we get back to you individually, or to the individual, you can look at it as a sociological, as a cultural, a collective phenomenon. And it is not, by any means, always, in any sense, a negative, a detrimental activity. But let me give you some of the examples that are never even noticed. All right, let's slip up on it. This one I bet somebody's tried to notice, but notice this. It's not part of the ordinary awareness of a civilized man. Church services, religious services, all over the way, I'll pick extremes again, all the way from, let's say, Catholic Mass, which is fairly undemonstrative, as opposed to a Southern Baptist Wednesday night bar meeting. That is, of a preacher, waving a book and hollering, and so said. And the congregation, somebody say, yes, tell him, Lord. Then so and da-da-dam. Yeah, no. Can somebody answer? Yes, da-da-dam. And then he said, yes. You understand I'm doing both parts. Are you following? And the guy will say, and Jesus said. And somebody say, yes, Lord. And can somebody, da-da-da-da. If you can get past the words and listen to that, it is literally. Now, I'm not trying to, in some way, as you guys know, I'm not trying to in some way cheapen it or laugh at it. I'm telling you, it is a rhythm section playing. The people are playing a rhythmical part, whether they know it or not, and the words are secondary. It could be worse than that, but I didn't want to turn your stomach in case you're a priest. or you're heavily leveraged into the religious biz. Don't sell short. Let me just jump back and forth to 2 or 3. Any of you who played in the high school band must know, if you look there on all the marches, it's actually printed, but at least you had a decent band director who'd point out, but it's printed on there. Stars and Stripes Forever, marching tempo, 120 beats per second, where it was. For those of you that don't like music militaire, if you're hanging around discos, and I won't ask you why, back in the 70s, well, even now with the dance music, that's right, they've cleaned it up and call it dance music instead of disco. With the records, the ones that DJs use out in clubs, if you don't know this, they're listed on there so that they can segue from one song to another from one turntable. It'll be listed on there 120 beats per second, or per minute. And I want to say 122. So they've got turntables that actually have a gradual, they can change the pitch and just gradually, so that one record moves into another, which they were in different keys is the point. And he wants the song to sound like it's in the same key. They are known. That doesn't mean that the people in the studios producing it know it, but they know that there are certain rhythms that seem to make more people will get up and dance. There are variations of this that surely somebody in acoustic sciences is aware of somewhere, but again, you might note it is not part of common knowledge. That in marches, in dancing, you can affect, if you get a large number of people and they're all participating, having fun. In the marching band, you're participating on the basis that you went out and volunteered. I will be in the band, you got in the uniform, and if you got a fairly decent, externally displayable sense of rhythm, you end up, and everybody's supposed to march left, right? Do, 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 do. And it's everybody together. All right? If you take the normal heartbeat, the pulse beat of humans at rest, whatever, 70 to 80 beats, and you start off and let's say you start it at 82, the music. What it makes you do, if you're participating, and if you're part of the band, you almost have to participate. Or if you're in a club, let's assume they didn't drug you and take you there, that you went there and paid your money, that you want to dance, and you want to, and of course, have a few drinks. It kind of loosens people's part of their limbic system up, and you want to participate. And the music is playing just a wee bit faster than your normal pulse rate. And what it makes you want to do, and it will, the more you participate, your pulse will catch up to it. You do know this is going somewhere, don't you? And the man in a box says, God, I hope not. Well, his feet don't care. His feet will listen to all this stuff, right? But you know the part that don't want to hear it, don't you? Oh, sorry. We'll get back to you. All right. Even though that you're normally familiar with, and in today's Western civilized world, or civilized world, that's about the only place you see march music. Are you aware of the fact, and I'm not going to try to improve history because we're not dealing with that kind of cheap news, remember, stuff that happened. I'm making this up. Believe me, there were times, I'll make it sound better, the Romans, especially I know the Scots did, even before they had some good booze and the name Scots, would play music, and what they would do, and even today if they knew what they were doing, the Chinese, as a matter of fact, if you want real news, the fake news, they were trying to do it back in the 50s in the Korean War, supposedly. At any rate, if you knew what you were doing, you had a group of men. Now, you were the head general, you were the king of land A, and you wanted to attack land B. The cheapest way, the most efficient way, if you knew how, was to get everybody, all the guys that were going to fight, have them armed, ready to go. Might help to get them a little liquored up. That's really beside the point, just a little. But then have some kind of music going. And get them away from the border where they expect to begin the conflict and the hostilities will commence. And get them away. An hour's march. And if you knew what you were doing, and you'd be up there with whoever's running the band, the drum major, and you would start. And you would, every 5 or 10 minutes, you would say, increase the tempo. And it would be just enough, and and then he would start. I'm sure all of you, even you women, have seen these things of guys in boot camp and marching, and there's a sing-along, and the drill sergeant's saying, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, hey, ho, hey, ho. You get them doing that. Like the king would start, or he would get the general would get the drum major. They'd have worked that beforehand. After they'd increased it a while, been marching maybe 30 minutes, then they would start something. Like, who we going to kill? You know. Hey, ho, who we kill? Who do I call it? The bee people, the bee people. So it'd start that. You could increase it up to a certain point, get it going faster and faster, to when they got up to where the hostilities were expected to commence. They got over the hill, and there's the beef people waiting. And suddenly the king just drop all pretense of the music and all that, just holler, sick 'em. And I wouldn't want to be over there. The same thing is going on in those kind of call and response church services. Same thing. But of course, ordinary people would deny this out of hand because they've got to. It's part of a serious hobby. That the words are important. If you could listen to the words, if it's in another language, if you could turn off your ability to hear English, well, you could do it. There are other countries besides. I'm just going to pick out Southern fundamentalist religion. But of a guy staying up there and talking, and people responding, it is like a rhythm section. It's like you've got a Latin rhythm section of some timbale players, some conga players, and you've got a guy that's kind of playing the lead. Let's spread it out a little. It goes on what would appear to be a less aggressive, certainly a more secular level between those last two examples, in fairly civilized political rallies, where you have a Mitterrand, or a Margaret Thatcher, or a Bill Clinton. Just average, the people we'll assume has no militaristic plans, no dictatorial ambitions, and it's not a church service. And it seems to be rather civilized, subdued. That is, the speaker's in a coat and tie, an audience is, and it's high-class people, educated people. It still goes on when it does good. When it don't go good, it's very short. But when it goes good at all, it may be nothing other than applause. That he goes, dun, 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 and it sounds like, of course, you're ordinary, you think, wait a minute, they're applauding because that was important stuff. He went, dun, 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 cut taxes. And I went, oh, hey, dun, 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 free beer, yeah. Again, as far removed as that may seem to be from militaristic adventures or from fundamentalist religious ideas, it is working off of the same rhythm. Anytime you have one person, and we're doing it here, just what I'm doing now. When I say I'm doing it, it takes two, remember. But when things are going good, and I don't mean to limit this because this gets, when it's doing right, when you're doing right, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take responsibility once. When you're doing right, it is one of the few times that the words have some significance. But you still cannot escape the fact that it would not live, because there is no such thing as information, even if this is important information, or at least information, without entertainment. And entertainment is always if it has no sense of rhythm, nothing is going on between whoever's up here. It could be a priest, Attila the Hun, Richard Nixon. Don't anybody say they're the same. I don't. The Pope, Julius Caesar, anybody that's up here, Bill Cosby. You understand? It could be a comedian, it could be a musician, but musician, I hesitate because you already got a sense of rhythm, but it could be somebody that would apparently be engaged in something far removed from ordinary showbiz. It could be a guy speaking on how to make a fortune in the stock market. That's getting pretty dry. But if it's going on, that if you just walked in the room and you could feel, as ordinary people would want to put it, a certain kind of electricity, even if you had no interest in what was going on. If something is going on between somebody standing up on stage, that the dance has some passion, that there's something going on between him and whoever's out here, then there is rhythm going on. No matter what else you call it, you can stand there, and you could. I could support the position that, well, wait a minute, it's not just that, because I went there for information, and he told me how to make loans without having to put up security in ways I never knew about. Okay, that's true. But you would not have heard it. It would not have taken place if you took away the rhythm. It is going on at the most apparently civil, dry, intellectual areas, such as lectures of that nature. It is going on in classrooms. It could be a professor and just 12 or 14 students in some small college. But you've been parts of audiences all your life, and you know, you perhaps never judge it this way, but the majority of the time, the show's not that great. But you could have a whole quarter from this professor, in early German lit. And perhaps once in the quarter, it was like the whole room came alive. And you may still be able to remember it, that you don't know why, but one day you were discussing Goethe. And you still remember, it was that red-headed guy over here, and he started arguing with the professor. And the professor smiled, and it was like for the first time all quarter, and it was like the whole, you can still remember the day. That one time, the rest of the time you slept through it, you hated it, and it's like something great happened. In fact, you may even remember that it almost made you almost go and read some Goethe. When there is life going on, and I'm picking out an example that seems to be outside of you to start with, like somebody on a stage, literally and figuratively, between somebody and an audience, whether they're dressed up like a priest, a minister, an advisor, an expert, or an entertainer. Nothing is going to work without rhythm. How does life keep men civilized? How does it control man? I'm using crude terms, but you people have a sophisticated enough mind that you don't have to, I'm sure you won't stop and stick there. It's not that life is engaged in a cheap conspiracy, because it doesn't need to be. Life needs no co-conspirators. Thank you. But how does it keep men in line? Exactly what I'm talking about. Are you ready? Hate to do it. But now up here, the rest of the time you're kept in line. There are news items tonight about peer pressure and social position that I'm not going to get around to. And all that sounds as though it's kind of culturally acquired aspects of human behavior. I must say to you, Fauntleroy. Pardon my language, but Fauntleroy. It's not true. Well, it's true enough, but beneath it is what? Rhythm. Rhythm. That's what holds a community together. That's what holds a nation together. That's what holds a group together in a room without them killing each other. How about wrestling matches, roller derby? If you were a civilized nerd, never been to such a place, and you walked in there and just stuck your head, you might go, "Holy Mother of God, let me out of here. They'll kill me." And there are plenty of people around. I'm not taking up for the sport or the exhibition, but there are certainly circumstances probably as wild a life as you may have led that if you walked in certain environments, you'd go, I want out of here. This is simply dangerous. And your feeling would be there's some kind of madness of this crowd. They could turn on me. This could turn into an ugly scene. But understand, those involved, it is a dance going on. It's not that maybe a fist fight doesn't happen or a cutting happen at some rock show or at a wrestling match or at roller derby. I'm sure it does. But by and large, if you looked at it and you had a disinterest, and you could look at it and you were still human and everything being equal and everything being this equal and that set, and you looked at it and you could say, this could get ugly. You might even feel like there is no alternative. This will get ugly. And yet you find out that they do this in the same location or somewhere 7 nights a week. Every night, 10,000 people show up. They drink beer, and they're punching each other, and they're looking at each other and shooting fingers to each other and doing this. And you find out, it's the last match of the night or the last race of the night, and they blow the whistle and say, well, we'll be here tomorrow night. And everybody goes, well, and they leave. Of course, I know if you're ordinary, you'd think, which I'll disabuse you of the idea that there's a difference between that and getting people all worked up in a church service or at Mass. Because if you could look at that a certain way, that's even more dangerous in a certain way than a group of, semi-literate drunks at roller derby. It's to see serious people all dressed up, taking religion seriously. I got news for you. If you don't know which one's the safer group to be around, it's not the one you would necessarily think. Because at least one of the groups is grown up to the age, let's say, of 12 or 13, whereas one of the groups, taken as a total, may not have. And I won't go into which is which. The point is, at the physical level, there's not a great deal of difference once you see it between, there go the geese, and suddenly they fly this way, and then that way, and then this way. Of this crowd, kill the bastard, and hitting each other, and looking across the ring at somebody over there and holler, who are you looking at? And all this, and suddenly they say, and that's the last thing of the evening, the last match, and they turn the lights, and everybody stands up. They smile and leave. You think there's some kind of difference between that and the geese being able to fly around like that? No. Life is held together. Animals, the universe, as we know it, the three-dimensional universe, and humans, human society, and you individually, you physically, are held together in part by rhythm. That you take away the rhythm, you are done. Take away the rhythm of your heart. You surely see that. It's not just metaphorical. You don't even have to stop the heart. All you got to do is mess up the rhythm. There's even a medical term for it. And you can live with some of it becoming arrhythmical. But if it really gets out of whack, like trying to see a computer salesman do the boogaloo, trying to see an Episcopalian get down at a dance club, you know what I'm talking about? Trying to see a spastic do a tango or something. If your heart does that, you don't have to stop it to kill somebody. If you had the ability, you don't have to say, well, I'll make his heart stop. All you got to do is make his heart begin to dance like a middle-aged Episcopalian. You don't have to stop it, and the man's dead. You understand? If you interfere too much, and it's not that much, but too much with the rhythm, he's a dead man. Forget it. He is dead. So you understand, no matter how you cut it, no matter what else you add on to it, how you dress it up, if you take away the rhythm, you could have everything else. Take away the rhythm of your heart, and you can have the lowest cholesterol level known to man. You can have, at the age of 60, lungs that internally look like the pink on a drunken sailor's cheeks. At least I didn't say an Irishman's cheeks. You can have all of your hair. You can have your hearing, 20/20 vision. You can have the waist of some 20-year-old boy who's probably looking for it by now. You can have all of that. You can be just a bundle of good health. And all you got to do is interfere with the rhythm of your heart, and you're dead. Dead. So you understand. Take that away and you're dead. Life is holding you together through rhythm, or if you want it if you want it more in your face. Without it, life, you would not be held together. The basis of it. Society would not be held together. This universe would not be held together. Take that away, and no matter what else was going in its favor, everything from the universe, our universe, to you personally, you individually, physically, are gone. You are falling apart shortly, very shortly. You're dead. You're finished. Now the question is, rhetorically speaking, this news item, by having large numbers of people think the same thing, life continues as mass manipulation, and I'll go ahead and fill it in, of the upper part. There is a rhythm, except you don't hear it. And it cannot really be explained. Well, I'm going to explain it to you. That is, you cannot even measure it in the same way that once I pointed it out, you can actually measure somebody's pulse. Everybody can do that. And you can even understand that, hey, if my heart begins to just beat every 60 seconds, and then it will beat 100 times in 10 seconds, and then it'll beat once every 2 seconds, and then it'll wait 30. In other words, the Episcopalian dancing. You would know, you understand, that would be very, very disturbing news. I would assume that I'll be dead shortly, and your assumptions would come true. You cannot measure what I'm about to point out. But once you see it, you don't need any proof. How are men kept sane? Now, we're talking as far as we can, which we can do it, of the cutoff between up here to the brainstem. from the limbic system up to the cortex. From man, the animal, the goose, the flock of gooses is. From that to the intellect. Life keeps man in a herd. Man keeps man manageable through one way, which is the mental equivalent to physical rhythm, and that is having large numbers of people think the same thing. Will it help if I say believe the same thing to start with? That if you're outside a group, let us say that you were a Hindu under certain conditions, and you turned and you looked at the Muslims, or vice versa, and you said, those group of people could not be more misled. I can take their philosophy, I can take their religion, and I can, to any sane, literate person, I can, in a matter of minutes, pick it to pieces. Sure you can, but you miss the point. It's rhythm. Except in this case, the rhythm is there's a large number of people believing it. That's all that's important. That's what holds it together. That's what makes, if we're going to now, let us call this ex-conclave of Hindus in India or somewhere, or we pick out any other example, as you know, or some community, a bunch of Baptists in Kansas, and they're right next door, there's another city that's almost entirely made up of Methodists. That's unimportant. What keeps them both alive intellectually, and how life keeps that group of people stable, sane, and civilized, and then you expand it, and you've got the whole planet. You've got humanity. It's having a large number of people all believe the same thing. But it's only ordinary cows and sheep that then will go, well, if that's true, it may be, but let me point out this example to which I find exception about these people that believe so-and-so. Won't you shut the hell up? You understand? You went too far. Because then if you're ordinary, you begin to say, wait a minute, but how about the people that believe the wrong thing? That's not the point. That's not what life is using on humanity. All it needs is a large number of people to believe the same thing. And it can continually shift. They can have several levels. That you can have this group of people over here that they all believe in the Baptist religion, over here all the Methodist religion. And then inside the Baptist you can have people who are followers of the NFL, and you have people over here or in there the AFL, and it can shift as fast as a man will breathe. At one time the importance seems to be the ball scores, and that's politics, and that's religion. But you are part of some group, if you're sane, you're part of some group that you have at least several beliefs, at the very minimal, one, that you consider to be important. You can say, I don't like sports, I'm not interested in politics, I'm not interested in this. I'm going to tell you what, my religion's important to me. And it should be to anybody else. There is where you are kept sane. There is where you are kept in line. There is how life keeps you civilized. There is how life continues to manipulate you, to manage you, to look after you. It's not a conspiracy. That's how life keeps ordinary sheep and cows sane, stable, fairly satisfied up here for 60 or 70 years. And that's why nobody actually wants to be an individual thinker. Not that they have any choice, but nobody's even interested in it. Because the health lies, the way that life looks after you, the way that you can coast through. I mean, from certain views, as trying and as unfair as life can be. At least, if you're part of some larger collection of thought and belief in something, at least you can coast. It's downhill for 60 or 70 years in the sense that you don't have to go out and think about it. When really pushed against the wall and things seem bad, your feeling is, get off my dick. I'm a Baptist. I'm a Democrat. Hey, I'm Jewish. I'm Italian. I'm part of the upper class. I'm poor. I've been sick. I've been mistreated. As long as you are thinking as a part of some larger group, it takes no effort. That is the way life holds humanity together intellectually. But notice, instead of everybody thinking the same thing, it is divided up into these enclaves of different religions, different political groups, and they argue with one another. But, if you want to complete the symbol for the night, You don't realize it, but your left lung argues with your right lung. The numbers above the line in your blood pressure and the ones below the line. When do you think you got two sides, two hemispheres of the brain? So concludes our analysis for tonight and for the week. Glad I could get to all of those.